Did you know that over 60% of adults struggle with vulnerability in relationships, according to recent psychological studies? Fear of rejection, emotional pain, or judgment keeps people from experiencing the true depths of love. This fear isn't just a passing thought, it's a paralyzing burden that impacts self-esteem, mental health, and the ability to connect with others. The truth is, millions of people are afraid to open their hearts, and I was one of them. My journey through this struggle wasn't just a chapter of my life. It felt like the entire story. For as long as I can remember, the idea of trusting someone fully terrified me. It all began in my early 20s. I was in a relationship that seemed perfect from the outside. Friends would envy the Instagram-worthy dates, the affectionate photos, and the way we appeared to be a dream team. But behind closed doors, I was battling invisible walls I had built around my heart. It wasn't something I planned. I didn't wake up one day and decide, I'm going to be emotionally closed off. It was a gradual process that started in childhood. My parents had a tumultuous relationship, full of arguments and moments of emotional withdrawal. As a child, I learned that love was unpredictable, and vulnerability often led to hurt. I carried those lessons into adulthood without even realizing it. The first time I felt the weight of my fear was during a heated argument with my partner. I don't even remember what sparked the fight, but I vividly remember the words he said, "You never let me in. It's like you don't trust me." He was right. I didn't. I couldn't. In that moment, I realized I wasn't just protecting myself from potential heartbreak. I was shutting out the very thing I longed for: intimacy, connection, and love. Things got worse before they got better. I began to sabotage the relationship with excuses. I would avoid deep conversations, shrug off compliments, and dismiss my partner's attempts to understand me. I felt like I was walking on thin ice, waiting for the inevitable moment when he would leave. And the irony? I was the one pushing him away. The breaking point came one rainy evening. I had just come home from work, drained and overwhelmed. My partner was waiting for me with dinner on the table and a concerned look on his face. He tried to talk to me about something that had been bothering him, but instead of listening, I shut down. I deflected. I got defensive. And then I said something I'll regret for the rest of my life: "Maybe it's better if we just end this. You deserve someone who can love you the way you need." I saw the pain in his eyes. He didn't argue or try to change my mind. He simply nodded, said he understood, and walked out of my life. The moment the door closed, I collapsed to the floor, overcome with guilt, regret, and a haunting realization: I had become my own worst enemy. In the weeks that followed, I spiraled. I threw myself into work, hoping to distract myself from the emptiness I felt inside. But no amount of overtime could fill the void. Nights were the hardest. I'd lie awake replaying every moment, every word, and every choice that led to the end of the relationship. I began to ask myself some hard questions. Why was I so afraid of love? Why did vulnerability feel like a threat instead of a gift? The answers weren't easy to face. I had been living in a constant state of fear: fear of being hurt, fear of being judged, fear of not being enough. This wasn't just about one failed relationship. It was a pattern that had defined my entire life. Friendships, family connections, even professional relationships, all of them suffered because I couldn't let my guard down. The turning point came during a conversation with a close friend. She sat me down and said something I'll never forget: "You can't keep running from yourself. Love isn't supposed to be perfect. It's supposed to be real." Her words hit me like a thunderbolt. I realized I had been chasing an impossible standard of love, one that required no risks, no pain, no vulnerability. But that's not what love is. This realization was the first step on a long and challenging journey. The solutions, the strategies, And the tools that helped me overcome this fear and transform my life are something I wish I had discovered earlier. They changed everything for me, and I know they can do the same for you. If you've ever felt trapped by the fear of opening your heart, if you've ever pushed someone away because it felt safer than letting them in, know this: you're not alone. The struggle is real, but so is the possibility of change. My story is proof that even the deepest fears can be conquered. I was once terrified of vulnerability, but today, I embrace it as a strength. It wasn't easy, and it didn't happen overnight, but the journey was worth every step. Now, it's your turn. After watching this video, you're going to walk away with a new perspective, and I promise you, transformation is closer than you think. Let me take you back to one of the lowest points in my life, because it's in those raw moments of heartbreak that the deepest lessons take root. A few weeks after that breakup, I found myself standing in the middle of my apartment, surrounded by piles of unopened mail, dirty dishes, and the remnants of a life I no longer recognized. I didn't even know who I was without the facade of being fine. I was tired of pretending. I was tired of running. But most of all, I was tired of feeling so alone. There was a night, I remember it so vividly, that changed everything. It was 2 a.m. The world outside was silent, and I was sitting on the couch in the dark, staring at an old photo of us. I wanted so badly to blame him, to tell myself it was his fault for not understanding me. But deep down, I knew the truth. I had sabotaged the relationship because I couldn't face my own fears. I thought about all the moments I had kept him at arm's length. The times I laughed off his compliments because I didn't believe I deserved them. The times I brushed off his questions about my past because I didn't want to relive the pain. The times I avoided saying, "I love you," because I was too afraid of what it meant to truly feel. It hit me like a tidal wave. I wasn't protecting myself. I was punishing myself. I was so afraid of being hurt that I had turned my heart into a fortress, and in doing so, I had locked out the very thing I craved most: love. That night, I broke. I cried in a way I hadn't allowed myself to in years. It wasn't just about the breakup, it was about everything. The childhood wounds, the self-doubt, the fear of not being enough. It all poured out of me, and for the first time, I let myself feel it. Every ounce of pain, every regret, every fear, I faced it head-on. The days that followed weren't easy. I still carried the weight of my choices, but something had shifted. For the first time, I stopped running from my emotions. I started to see my fear for what it was: a defense mechanism born out of past hurts. And while I didn't have all the answers yet, I knew one thing for sure: I didn't want to live like this anymore. I began to notice how my fear of vulnerability seeped into every corner of my life. At work, I avoided taking risks because I was afraid of failure. With friends, I kept my struggles to myself because I didn't want to burden anyone. Even in moments of joy, I held back, afraid that letting myself feel too much would somehow invite pain. It was exhausting. One day, I caught myself thinking about what my life might look like if I never changed. The thought terrified me. Would I spend the rest of my life alone, too scared to let anyone in? Would I miss out on the beauty of connection because I was too focused on protecting myself? That's when I made a promise to myself: I was going to figure this out. I didn't know how, but I knew I couldn't keep living in fear. I wanted to love and be loved without the constant nagging voice in my head telling me I wasn't worthy. I wanted to open my heart, even if it meant risking pain, because I finally understood that the alternative, living a life devoid of connection, was far worse. I wish I could tell you it was a smooth journey from there, but it wasn't. There were days I felt like I was making progress, and then there were days I felt like I was back at square one. The fear didn't disappear overnight. It lingered, whispering doubts and tempting me to retreat into old patterns. But each time I faced it, each time I chose vulnerability over fear, I grew stronger. I learned to embrace the uncertainty, to sit with the discomfort, and to remind myself that love is worth the risk. Looking back now, I realize that the fear wasn't the enemy. It was a teacher. It showed me where I needed to grow, where I needed to heal, and where I needed to let go. And while the journey wasn't easy, it was absolutely worth it. So, if you're watching this and you're feeling stuck, if you're afraid to let someone in because you don't want to get hurt, I want you to know this: you're not alone. I've been where you are, and I know how heavy that fear can feel. But I also know that change is possible. The answers, the strategies, and the insights that transformed my life are something I wish I had known sooner. They made all the difference for me, and I believe they can do the same for you. After watching this video, I promise you'll walk away with hope, clarity, and the tools to take the first step toward embracing love without fear. Your story doesn't have to end in heartbreak. It can be one of transformation, connection, and a love that feels free. And I'm here to tell you, from the depths of my heart, that it's possible. The turning point in my life didn't come with some grand gesture or sudden realization. It began with a single decision: to stop avoiding the truth. I woke up one morning and told myself, you need to take control of your life. No one else will do it for you. That day, I started by doing something small. I wrote down every fear I had about love and vulnerability. It wasn't easy admitting to myself that I was afraid of rejection, afraid of being judged, and most of all, afraid of being truly seen for who I was. Writing it all down felt like ripping off a bandage, but it was the first step in understanding the problem I had been running from for so long. This was my first lesson: acknowledging your fears gives you the power to face them. I began looking for resources to help me. I sought out information, watched videos, and read stories from others who had gone through similar struggles. It was comforting to know I wasn't alone. One video I stumbled upon talked about the importance of self-awareness in overcoming relationship challenges. It resonated with me deeply because, until that moment, I hadn't realized just how much I had been blaming others for my inability to connect. Next, I took a deep dive into my past. I started journaling about my childhood, my relationships, and the moments that had shaped my fear of intimacy. This wasn't easy. Reliving painful memories is like opening wounds you thought had healed. But as I wrote, I began to see patterns. I noticed how unresolved issues from my early years had bled into my adult relationships. Understanding these patterns was like shining a light into a dark room. It helped me see that my fear wasn't my fault, it was a defense mechanism I had developed over time. The more I uncovered, the more I realized I couldn't do this alone. I needed support, so I reached out to a therapist who specialized in relationships and emotional growth. Talking to a professional felt awkward at first. I didn't know how to open up or where to start. But the more I shared, the more I realized how much I had been holding inside. My therapist helped me understand that vulnerability wasn't a weakness, but a strength. She guided me through exercises to help me let my guard down, starting with the people I felt safest with. One of the hardest, but most transformative steps was learning to communicate my feelings. I had spent years bottling up my emotions because I thought sharing them would make me seem weak or needy. But I began practicing small moments of honesty with close friends and family. It felt terrifying at first, but each time I opened up, I felt a little lighter. I also learned to set boundaries. I realized that part of my fear of vulnerability came from a lack of control in my past relationships. Setting clear boundaries with others gave me a sense of security. It allowed me to be open without feeling like I was losing myself. Another critical step was embracing self-love. For years, I had based my worth on how others saw me, and when relationships failed, I internalized it as a reflection of my value. Through therapy and self-reflection, I learned to appreciate myself for who I was, flaws and all. I started doing things that made me happy, things I had neglected while trying to meet the expectations of others. Whether it was hiking, painting, or simply spending time with myself, these small acts of self-care rebuilt my confidence. The most surprising part of this journey was how it began to impact other areas of my life. As I became more open and confident in my relationships, I noticed positive changes in my career and friendships. I stopped being afraid of asking for what I needed. I started saying yes to opportunities that scared me but excited me at the same time. Of course, there were setbacks. Some days, I felt like I was making progress, and other days, I felt like I was back where I started. But I learned to be patient with myself. Growth isn't linear. It's a messy, beautiful process that requires compassion and persistence. Eventually, I reached a point where I felt ready to enter a new relationship. This time, I approached it differently. I didn't pretend to be someone I wasn't or hide my flaws. I allowed myself to be vulnerable, even when it scared me. And to my surprise, it brought me closer to my partner. Instead of pushing them away when things got tough, I leaned in and trusted that we could work through it together. Looking back, I can see how far I've come. The person I was a few years ago wouldn't recognize the person I am today. My fear of vulnerability no longer controls me. I've learned to embrace love without fear, and it has transformed every aspect of my life. But here's the thing, I didn't do it alone. Along the way, I discovered resources that were instrumental in my journey. One of the most powerful tools I found was a book titled Embracing Love Without Fear, a guide to vulnerability in relationships. This isn't just any book. It's a comprehensive guide filled with expert advice and actionable strategies to help anyone struggling with fear of vulnerability in relationships. The insights and exercises in this book were life-changing for me. They helped me understand my fears, confront them head-on, and build the confidence to open my heart again. If you're ready to transform your life and embrace love without fear, I can't recommend this book enough. You can get a digital copy at librify.com by clicking the link in the description. It's time to take that first step toward the love and connection you deserve. The journey didn't stop there, though. While I had made significant progress, the work of embracing vulnerability and cultivating love without fear is an ongoing process. Every relationship, whether romantic, platonic, or even professional, continues to teach me new lessons about openness, trust, and resilience. One of the most significant shifts I experienced was realizing that vulnerability doesn't just deepen connections with others, it also strengthens your connection with yourself. For years, I had lived with this wall around my emotions, thinking it was protecting me. But in truth, it was isolating me. The more I leaned into vulnerability, the more I discovered parts of myself I had ignored or buried. For example, I started journaling regularly, not just to reflect on the past, but to process my day-to-day experiences. This simple act became a lifeline. It gave me a safe space to explore my emotions without judgment. When I wrote, I could see patterns emerging in my thoughts and behaviors. I noticed how my fear of rejection had made me hesitant to share my ideas at work or even pursue hobbies that brought me joy. Slowly but surely, I began challenging those fears, one small step at a time. Another pivotal moment came when I joined a support group focused on emotional growth. Sitting in a circle with strangers and sharing my story felt terrifying at first. But as I listened to others open up about their struggles, I realized how universal these fears are. We are all afraid of being hurt, of being misunderstood, of being left behind. And yet, the act of sharing those fears, of saying them out loud in a space where they were met with compassion, was profoundly healing. In those meetings, I learned about the power of affirmations and mindfulness. These weren't just buzzwords, they became tools I used daily to reframe my thoughts. When my mind started spiraling into self-doubt or worry, I practiced grounding techniques to bring myself back to the present. I reminded myself that vulnerability isn't a risk, it's an opportunity. A key breakthrough came when I faced one of my oldest fears, apologizing. There was someone in my life, a dear friend, whom I had pushed away during one of my lowest points. For years, I had avoided reaching out, terrified of rejection. But I knew I couldn't move forward without addressing that wound. With my heart pounding, I called them and apologized for my behavior. To my surprise, they forgave me, and we had one of the most honest, heartfelt conversations of my life. That experience taught me that vulnerability can mend even the deepest cracks in our relationships. As I grew more comfortable with vulnerability, I began to set healthier boundaries. This might sound counterintuitive, but being vulnerable doesn't mean saying yes to everything or letting people walk all over you. It means being honest about what you need and trusting that the right people will respect those needs. Learning to say no when necessary was one of the most liberating steps I took. Through all of this, one theme kept emerging: vulnerability isn't a one-time act. It's a daily choice. There are still moments when fear creeps in, whispering that I should retreat to my old ways. But now, I have the tools and the confidence to push through those fears. One of the most unexpected benefits of embracing vulnerability was how it improved my relationship with myself. I started celebrating my wins, no matter how small they seemed. I stopped criticizing myself for every mistake and instead viewed them as opportunities to grow. This shift in mindset had a ripple effect on every aspect of my life. Now, when I look at my relationships, I see depth, authenticity, and trust. I've formed connections that feel genuine and fulfilling, and I've let go of the ones that drained me. I've also discovered that vulnerability doesn't just open the door to love, it also helps you build resilience. The more I practiced being open, the stronger I felt in the face of challenges. But the truth is, none of this happened overnight. It took time, effort, and guidance from incredible resources. And that brings me to the book that played such a pivotal role in my journey, a book titled Embracing Love Without Fear: A Guide to Vulnerability in Relationships. This book isn't just another self-help guide, it's a transformative tool packed with expert advice and actionable steps that can help anyone struggling with fear and insecurity in relationships. It walks you through the emotional, mental, and practical aspects of overcoming these challenges, offering a clear roadmap to a more open and fulfilling life. For me, this book was like a light in the darkness. It gave me the clarity and courage I needed to face my fears and make lasting changes. Whether you're looking to improve a romantic relationship, heal old wounds, or simply feel more connected to yourself and others, this book has something for you. You can get a digital copy of Embracing Love Without Fear at Librify.com by clicking the link in the description. Trust me, this book has the power to transform your life, just like it did mine. Take the first step toward a life filled with love, trust, and vulnerability. You won't regret it. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.